silent. So, good morning. Yes, please. Posture. What do you feel needs to change?
It's to do with this setup, and then also just an awareness of, I haven't really clocked what I'm doing in terms of finger flexibility, and it seems very minimal at the moment, which is maybe fine, but
yeah, because I was going to say your posture to me looks fine. Have you got any pain? Are you uncomfortable?
I think generally it's also body posture. I was just thinking then about trying to activate my core, because I do generally not activate
a bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's I guess good.
Because I would say the two things, that I've kind of been thinking about just then and also generally, are the role of the fingers in the right hand. I think you're still letting the violin do most of the work, and that's fine. But then you can kind of sculpt the sound by having more awareness of what happens here.
Yeah.
And just then I was noticing there was quite a lot of movement on the contact point. So should we just play it one more time and just kind of bring your attention to where the bow is in relation to the bridge? I think the other thing about that is that part of what was happening was a bit of that you were kind of going away at the heel, and that is partly because you're not quite sure about all of this. So that will help. That will force you to do something different here, even if you're just thinking about staying on the same track.
It's hilarious that I'm getting picked up on the things that I pick up my students.
It's not hilarious at all, it's absolutely classic. Our students reflect back to us what we need to work on. I mean, that's how it goes. Definitely. Because they're sponges, they pick up so much, you don't have to tell them what they need to pick up, they'll pick up everything. That's some of them anyway. Okay, shall we play the Vivaldi, first movement, A minor? a little bit of a shaken tea, etc.
I love that piece.
It's so great.
Yeah.
There are a few fingerings that I recommend you change. That we'll go through it, but yeah, definitely some I think are just an invite to slide all over the place in a very un-Baroque way.
Okay.
And I don't think
I can just watch back the video and make sure that I.
Yeah, but we'll just talk about them a little bit as well, and the sort of danger spots. I think the other thing I wanted to say is that if you imagine how you would play this in a concert yourself, how you would play this in front of a group of children, and how you would play it in demonstration, there's sort of 3 different versions. Because I was thinking about, you know, like in my role just then as kind of leader, like if there is like when we do it in group, there are certain times when I probably, if you heard me play it by myself exactly the same as I was doing, like actually I might even lose some of the notes because I'm really trying to make the dynamics so clear to them. And also that thing of when you're leading a group that you have to show what is about to happen. So if they haven't remembered, they've got time, they've got that kind of second to process it. So like, it's kind of weird, like you do it and then you do it. And you have to really practice. It's just, oh, I thought I could hear a weird noise. It's the same in fiocco. There's little notes, but yeah, you have to like get down there while you're still playing quite loud notes. But also you don't have to play them loud because the kids will be.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of like, think about what you're showing with your body as well as what you're doing with your playing.
Tricky.
Yeah, yeah.
Tricky.
That's why the job doesn't get
there
boring. Okay, so let's have a look at the changes that I recommend. I think first of all it's just nice to talk about a different sound here because this is tutti and then it's solo. So even if it's just like a kind of intellectual understanding, they may not change their sound so much, but this is going to sound different in the true context of the concerto. I feel like anyone watching this video is just now looking at our backs.
So what would you say generally are solo qualities that you want to hear that maybe you don't want to hear in the tutti?
Well, a more projected sound when it's loud. That, I guess that's what I mean. I don't think they're really changing the sound that they're making from tutti to solo, but it's just a sort of awareness that if you did it with orchestra, this would be all of us and this would be just you. So if you're working on it in group, for example, then you can practice doing that and have everybody drop out and then allocate different solos to different people so they hear that change.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's really a kind of more musicological understanding. So yeah, that is definitely what I recommend doing, and you just haven't put it into your hand yet, even though it's in your music. Do you want to grab your wallet?
Yeah.
I don't understand why whoever edited this would put a 4E there. It's so gross. I just use an open E on both of those.
This is what I do in my lessons.
Ah, that's clever. Okay, let's just play the first notes of this cadenza section. I think it's also nice for the students if you tell them, they may never have been to a jazz gig, but if you go to a jazz gig and someone does a solo, it's expected that you'll clap as soon as they finish and everyone else comes back in rather than wait till the end of the piece. And I always like to imagine that you get to the end of this and the end of the one on the third page and there's like a little ripple of like, well done! You know, it's like in your head, and then at the end they actually clap. Okay, so let's just play the upbeat and then the downbeats of each one and just think about how you're playing, what fingers you're using.
creates a sense of arrival more.
Yeah, good. Anything else? A technical reason?
Because we're going to be going to another note on the E string.
Yeah, exactly. It's just easier, a very basic way. But if you think about these patterns, E string, D string, D string, E string, D string, D string, E string, E string, D string, D string. You've got a really nice pattern there. I mean, it's very sophisticated, obviously, like, you know, most people listening are not going to pick that up. But I think it's useful to talk about these things, especially if you've got a slightly older, you know, if you're doing this with a 9-year-old, it's probably not a conversation that they're interested in. But if you're doing it with a 15-year-old who's thinking about GCSE music, you know, these are the kind of things like pattern spotting and sort of, you know, those kind of artistic decisions that do give us the option to make Vivaldi our own, even though obviously it's been played for hundreds of years by probably millions of people. And again, I think the other thing, for your solo, as your exam piece, the other thing that you can think about is the longer phrases and how they fit into, you've got beautiful phrasing within each bar structure, but I think things like here, do you want to just play me from there? Crescendo was lovely, but these sort of were quite similar, those first few. So just have a little listen. So you just have a bigger sort of sense of the broader framework rather than this note's important, this note's important, this note's important, this note's important, which is absolutely right, but then you can sort of, yeah, sculpt it even more. And you were just a bit unclear on what you were doing with your fingers there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll put that in the box.
And the same thing, sort of, if you go down to piano, if you start at piano and then do piano again and then do piano again, there's nothing there, is there? I mean, it's just a really, it's so weird. They've done all of this editing of these markings that wouldn't have been in the original, and most of them just piano crescendo. It's like, did you really need to print that? So let's play from here and just think about coming down, 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 and then up, 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 basically.
And down, that you mean diminuendo?
I'll show you. I'll show you. Starting louder, so bar 45, the end of 45, starting louder, and so maybe not forte, but like mezzo forte, mezzo piano, piano, mezzo piano, piano, and then this is all quiet. I think it's quite nice to have a section of quiet, and then crescendo up towards the first one, 55, and then a straight echo, so I would say piano, not mezzo piano, in 56. Somewhere there is a pen that's got a finer nib. There you go. I think it might be that fun. Good. And then let's just play this. Do you want to play it with me or to me? Very useful phrase, by the way, for your students.
With me or to me? I'll play it to you.
Okay.
From here.
Yeah. you can make more of the bigger shapes and less of each accent.
Okay.
And you just started to brush at the hardest bit, which is, you know, classic.
More of bigger shapes. Less of accent. Sorry, this will help me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. So, yeah, I think we'll probably play this to you before. These are the loudest 5. And then you've got much longer crescendo. So you've got to really pace yourself very differently at 65. Yeah.
Pacing here.
Yeah. Slower crescendo. It's alright. Okay, so let's just play that slower, so that we can have a sense of those. But we'll go from here. Okay, let's just take it down a notch. You need to think about your downbeats being more important at the end of each crescendo. So I actually, again, I'm always saying to my students, there's someone else made this up, so why can't we make it up? Like I would take that piano out, I would move it to the C. So anyone watching, we're at the beginning of 60, because to me this tune, yuck. To go is like weird. Why are we doing that? Like this is the beginning of this is like, hey, I'm here, this is my time, listen to all these notes I've got to play. So I would definitely play. Same thing. That's the most important. So in terms of difficulty, that's one of the things. Obviously the chromaticism in the fingers is what makes it really tricky. We've done this teaching points on this already, but this bar is one that everybody always falls up on because of the string crossing. Let's just play from that B, super slow. Do, 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 ready, and. So double string crossing. So you've got 2 double string crossings at the tip, well not at the tip, but in the upper half on an up bow. So that really needs them to be aware. I often write in what bow direction it's going to be just on the first of each 4 there.
That's clever.
Have you got the page that is just the notes of this written as crotchets?
No.
I think it's in the Dropbox. Do you want me just to print it for you?
We can print it, yeah. That'd be handy.
Oh no, my computer is recording. We'll print it later. Anyway, we can print it at lunchtime if you want it. Yeah, so I think it's really beautiful. You're doing it really nicely already.
But thinking about it bigger.
Yeah, it's more sort of refined musical interpretation. So you always want, as the teacher, you want to be trying to pull the students up to your level, not come down to theirs. So like the first of each four is a very, you know, basic understanding that they're going to definitely have by now, and the kind of hierarchy of the 4/4 bar, you can call it. But then being able to teach them that that doesn't just mean that you bash the first of each four and then bash the first of each semiquaver four a little bit less, but actually like how can you find the phrasing within 16 bars? They won't do that automatically, so then you can show them that rather than, you know, you're always trying to make them excel rather than come down to meet them where they are.
No, I wasn't trying to come down, I was just
And also, you know, that double thing again, we're always thinking about the triple layer of teaching that, you know, in preview, they might be doing this last page, you're not going to say a thing about dynamics, it's just literally, can you get your fingers and your bows in the right place at the right time? And then they learn it as a piece, and they're going to get their credit for being able to get from the start to the finish pretty much correctly. And then maybe a year later they might graduate, and that's where you really put the work of the refinement in, or do it for a solo, or, you know, something. So that triple layer of like preview, working piece, review, and that's, you know, a very different approach for each of those moments in their relationship with the piece.
Okay, cool.
Good. Shall we do some?
Should we play it through?
Yeah. Why don't?
Yeah. I haven't written in my pants for this one yet.
We haven't done them yet. I don't think. No. In fact, I think what I had on the list was teaching points during these lessons. So this is sort of what we're doing. I just want to see if Jo said anything about where she's at. No. Okay, do you want to play it with me, or would you like me to play it on the piano with you?
Whatever you prefer.
I'll just play with you. It's nice to play. Do you want to use my book 5 so that you can see the shifts and stuff? Oh my goodness. Excuse me. So, the things I've changed are that finger in there in 23. I'm mindful to try and teach my students that whenever they can, they want to shift on a semitone. And so in this bar 22, you can stay in second, but then you've got to go over 2 strings and up a semitone. Whereas, if they do that semitone, then they can just put the finger on. So they can understand that it's not always the semitone thing that makes a difference. It's still a semitone however you do it. But this means that you've got that finger flexibility to just put it straight on the E string and you're not jumping across.
But then you're vibratoing on a 1, which I find less easy.
I think that you want to try not to hand that down to your students. It's a bit like second position. I think lots of my generation anyway grew up with sort of not liking second position, and I think it's just because our teachers didn't like it and they just taught us to avoid it. And since I've really embraced it, I'm like, this is fine, why are we so worried about it? And I'm really trying to do lots of it with my students so that they don't have that same anxiety that I had about second position. So there's that one in 22, and then the place that's similar but it doesn't make sense to change, although you could, is 43. So I tend to leave that as it is, but actually while I was playing it, I was maybe... Oh, I remember why. Because you're only in second. If you change that to be the same as that, then you're only in second position for 1 note. And because you're right on the next string, it's not a big jump. How would you like to approach it? Musically or technically first?
Musically.
Musically. Okay. So what do you think that is going to be something the students need help with in this piece?
Well, what I find is just the slower pulse.
Yeah.
And like dividing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's also what they will find. I guess that's a bit of a grey area, like musically, technically, isn't it? But definitely, there's a reason there's no slow movements until book 5, and that's because it's harder to keep a slower pulse. And so I think, like talking about subdividing, feeling that 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, that kind of shape, where you're subdividing it, but it's not 1 and 2 and 3 and, is helpful. The rests they find very difficult to memorise when notes are longer and when there's a rest, and you will really often hear, in the same way as in the Vivaldi A minor slow movement, you hear this. They always make that a 5/8 bar. So the same thing happens here, you get. So they've got to really be doing enough listening that they can imagine the piano part in their head, what's happening in all these long notes. It's not just that you're playing a long note, it's that someone else is doing something more interesting. For example, 52. That's not actually what happens, but there's something happening there in the piano. Just to feel the pulse. What bar was I on?
52.
Thank you. Oh yeah. So again, if you were doing this in a group, it might be really nice to just photocopy the piano part and get half the group to play the quavers in those long notes. I think our top group has got about probably 6 months until they're all at this point at least. So Amy could come and have a little play with them. Yeah, so other things musically is that really like those long phrases that we were talking about in the first faster movements. Same thing about how do you find a shape in 4 bars of really slow 3. You're going towards here and then away again. think, for example, you can talk about like those first 2 bars are a sort of mini phrase, you're going towards the 2nd bar, but then the 3rd and 4th kind of mirror that, you're going towards the 4th bar. But it's more, there's more shape, molto espressivo, there's more shape there than in the 23, 24, 25, 26, which I think is dolce sweet. It's quite simple, isn't it? Like, you don't want to over egg the pudding there of doing too much. The music does it for you. And then this is a sort of interesting new tonality. So you might bring out the first of each 4 in 28 and 29 more than you did in 21, for example. It's not just a kind of hill. And then once you get to here, you're kind of in an echo type situation. You're kind of trying again. With more success. So you've got quite a lot, even just in those 4 big first 4 phrases, you've got a sort of quite a hilly one, and then quite a semplice one, and then one that is more like an echo and an answer.
Semplice.
Semplice.
Great.
Technically, one of the things I learned from the amazing Mark Knight, I think we want to match the speed of our trills to the speed of the piece, the tempo of the piece. And I think until then, when I was about 19 or no, 17, and he talked to me about that, I'd always just been like, trill is where you just tap your finger as fast as you can, basically. So I think that we can really teach our students that there are many different types of trills. And here, you know, if you hear, it's like, doesn't fit, it's too hectic. And they can just really make it part of the mood. And talking about trills, I've never understood why, like why would Vivaldi, if Vivaldi wanted bar 45 and 47 to be, what would he have written? A dotted minute with a trill.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know you're going to change your bows because it's faster, but you know, like it's, I just can't see any decent argument for keeping those like one sound all the way through. And the other thing about Baroque trills is, here's Joe, the other thing about Baroque trills is that you trill for a bit and then you have a bit of plain note.
Okay.
We will continue this discussion in a moment. Yeah, so Baroque trills, mostly upper note. The thing about Baroque trills is if you're approaching from the note that would be your upper note, I don't think it's clear. I don't think I'm wrong in saying this. If anyone watching on YouTube knows, please write me a note. I think it is more down to kind of personal interpretation, whether you would then do that note again to be an upper note trill, or whether you would just start on the note. Whereas if it's somewhere like bar 25 into 26, because that if it was this, you might play, but because it goes back up a tone, sorry, not a third, you definitely would do an upper note trill, which is why they've printed it there. So with these trills, I think that would be fine, but personally, I prefer the upper note trill, but we definitely want a bit of note and a slight breath in between each of those notes. Should we just play from there? Yeah, and that I don't think should be in a cacciatura. It should be a whole quaver, because it's wrong. Whereas 26, to go back to that, you wouldn't play.
Ah, it's changed actually.
Oh, good! Excellent. And I should have also written that in to my part. Yeah.
It's hard to do that diminuendo on the up bow.
It is, and you know, I don't think that they would have sustained it 6 beats.
Kind of just
Yeah. I also am sure that that crotchet, if you could look at the manuscript, the crotchet in 56, I bet would just be something that's not quite clearly a crotchet or a minim. I don't know, but I don't feel like Vivaldi would want us to play. It's so brutal. There's nothing in the piano part that happens that's really exciting. Anyway, if your students have that happening on the last note, you can teach them to purposefully pull the bow at the wrong angle, like that, because it will reduce the bounce.
okay.
And also for you, if you're ever in that situation yourself. Hello, my love.
For the other room, so I get my instrument.
Oh yeah, 0, well, C, it's fine, 0369.
C0369.
X.
Yeah, thanks.
No worries. If you want to just take a break, we're taking a break in 10 minutes. Or you can come join us, you're very welcome, either. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have gone up the A string in 37 and 39, no, 41. Lots of teachers are now teaching it just over the string, so. I really like how that sounds. If I was doing it in a recital, I would definitely do that. But I also think we've got country dance coming up. They haven't done very many big shifts. They've done lots of little up and down between first and third, second and third, third and fourth, occasionally first. I mean, if you think about the big shifts in book 5, can you think of any? Apart from country dance?
There's the one really slow. What's the piece? That we're not doing. Is that?
Third movement of the.
That's the one we're not doing. That means, yeah. No, we are doing it, but it's not a big shift. No. Well, I don't want my students to do that.
The third movement.
Yeah. Off.
The Vivaldi
Yeah. Keep
G
going.
Minor.
Well done. Yeah. I'm pleased that was in tune before midday on a Tuesday. Yeah, so you've got that, you've got these two, and then really there's nothing else. Oh, it's the first movement, not the third movement. I got it wrong as well.
Was it? Oh.
Yeah. You said it with such confidence, I was like, yes. Oh no, no. But anyway, the right piece.
Yeah.
Just a different part. And then we've got country dance, German dance, nothing really. Vivaldi G, literally 4 notes in third position, that's it. And then the Bach double, again, going up to third position and back down, but nothing big. So for my students, I do mostly want them to do those big shifts. If they're sort of, you know, if you're 15 or 16 and you don't want to stop using the Suzuki books, but you're like embarrassed that there are 11 and 12-year-olds that are doing the same pieces as you, and you just want to give them, you know, a bit of an easier time and just get through so that they can feel good about themselves and enjoy playing a violin, right? That's our primary motivation for all of this, is to make them love the violin. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing those shifts at all. But, you know, in terms of like, you know, children, it's a very different thing to be a 16-year-old who's going to be learning this piece than it is to be an 8-year-old learning this piece than it is to be a 12-year-old and all the shades in between. And I think if you've got an 11 or a 12-year-old, you've got no idea what they're going to be doing by the end of school. They may decide that they do want to become a violinist, or not become a professional, but take it really seriously. And therefore you want to give them as thorough grounding as possible. Whereas if you're 16 and you're playing this piece, you're not going to become a professional violinist unless you have some major, enormous change of heart in your life and suddenly you start practicing for 5 hours a day for the last 2 years of school, which could happen, but it's unlikely. And so, and it also, you will know if your student suddenly gets the bug, then you can respond appropriately. But you know, I think you can, there are different courses for different horses. But yeah, let's do the last 6 minutes on these 2 shifts, because they're so fun. Tuning to another violin's A, once you get close enough it'll just sound like a big A, but then if you play your turn, my turn, you might hear that it's a slightly different one, whereas if you're tuning to another timbre, then you will probably hear.
That's a very difficulty.
It is.
It's alright, weekend rings.
Absolutely. Right, so I'm just going to take you through, I can get rid of this, take you through the steps of how to teach, how to approach these 2 shifts, and we're doing them in preview, so they're not playing the whole piece yet. Okay, so ready, and then I would say to the student, name that interval for me.
6? No.
Okay, what are you going to do to work this out? Yeah, so just talk us through what's going on inside your head, because we can't mind read.
To me, thirds sound like 60s. I'm often mistaken.
Okay, so but what can you do, which will mean immediately that you never make that mistake again?
I don't know.
Yeah, use the scale. Sing.
Yeah.
So do, re, mi. It's not a 6th. It has the same kind of resonance as a 6th. So 1, 2, 3 is the 3rd. Yeah. Whereas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll know that it's much further away. Yeah? And so that's exactly what we would teach the kids. You can use numbers or you can use...
Okay. Yeah.
And then is it big or is it small? Major or minor?
Major.
Yeah, exactly. It's very tempting to talk about happy and sad, but with intervals, you don't want to do that, I don't think, because one of the things that will happen is if you are thinking about an arpeggio, for example, you'll say to them, okay, what's that interval? They go 1, 2, 3. Is it happy or sad? It's happy. Okay, it's a major 3rd. Great. And then 1, 2, 3. That's a 3rd as well. Is it happy or sad? It's happy, because that's the they're in the triad of the major. But of course, an arpeggio is a major 3rd and then a minor 3rd. So if you think about big and small, it's much better. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Is it big or is it small? Yeah. Well, you could make it smaller, so therefore it's big. If you made it smaller, it's not a 3rd anymore. So it's a small and minor. Okay. So one more time, and then we would do loads together in a lesson. Good, my turn. So we might have done 10 or even 15 of the first one at this point. Let's just go around a few times. Very good, and my turn. Your turn. we've just done in 5 minutes. Depends, you know, how much shifting they've done, what their ear is like. But the point is to take it out of the resonance of this piece, because the reason it's so hard is that we're rooted in B flat major. That's the 7th, or B major, and the diminished 7th. So to find that resonance there for the guide note is like nowhere near where we are harmonically. It makes no sense. So you want to make it a mechanical movement they're used to doing, outside of thinking about what the key is and what the music sounds like and all of that lovely musical stuff that won't get them in tune. Because what they all want to do, they all, if they're doing good enough listening, they know what they're aiming for. So what you will hear is frankly revolting. We don't, even if they can get there in beautifully, we still don't want to hear that in Vivaldi. So it's got to be a guide note shift. So once they can do that, then we would be going that. Good, so they would do that 10 times. Now stay there and put your foot on. And this should be familiar, well it will be for them because they've done it now like 100 times or something. Yeah, so and then they've got that shift. So however long you need on each stage, those are the stages. I've got a really horrible feeling that maybe this isn't recording any sound because the mic is plugged in but not working. Hopefully that's not the case. We'll see in a minute. And then, so when you get there in the actual piece, the other challenge you've got is the bow distribution. Crescendo, and then really slow the bow, twice as much time on that down bow. And then an up bow retake, and that's the first retake of the piece. Let's do the second one. So we'll play it first as it is. Actually, sorry, we haven't played the first one in its entirety, have we? 2, 4. Okay, right to the tip, put your 1 where your 2 was. 2, 2, 4, 1. Go to your guide note. Yeah, okay, so that is exactly the same intervals and patterns, but obviously starting in second position. So then you can do all of this as well. Add the 4. My turn, good. Ready? Find this note. Good, and then ready? Good, and then so they would put it in like that, where they hear that F natural for quite a while before they then start to drop it. But the left hand always does that. It's the bow that starts to change where it's moving so that you don't hear the guide note so clearly. Yeah? Let's just play the second one. So from C. Joe, please watch this video. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's got any sound.
Yay.
Fingers crossed.